All right, thanks. I'm just typing something in the chat. So just a reminder, please not mutt, but mute your microphone. And unmute if you have a question though, because this is just a general thing. So if you have specifics, please stop me and we'll get it going here. So this, and Michelle will be joining us also, I believe. Michelle Miller will, but she has her hands full with a newborn and she's working on that as well. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and then we'll get started with Google Form. When I share my screen, I cannot see the chat. So if you have a question about something, please just go ahead and chime in on it.
Hey, Mark, I'm here.
Oh, great. Hold on a second. I'm waiting for my screen to, is my screen showing you guys?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, because okay, great. All right. So the first thing is that on Google Forms is how to get there. And what you want to do is you want to click on the waffles is the easiest way that I get there under Google Apps. Scroll down and Forms is the purple sheet that you see. And then you have choices. There is a, so here's all the ones that I've made, all the forms I've made here. If you want to start a new form, you can go here. If you want to make it straight up a quiz, start with a quiz right away, you do here. I usually start with a blank and then turn the blank into a quiz in my settings. And then there's also a template. If you're looking for an exit ticket, like how are you guys feeling? Do you have an understanding? You can do that. There's assessment template and worksheet template. And there's also other templates as well as you go down. So that's one thing that most people, some people are not sure about. I'm going to start with a blank, with just a blank. Let me go back with a blank form. So again, I go to the waffles, I hit the purple form sheet, and I'm going to start with a blank. Okay, and so I'm going to start with the title of the form. I'll title this April 20th, 9:30 EESD PD. And Google Forms, my description will be Google Forms presentation. And then up here, I'm going to click on Untitled Forms. And if you just click on it, it'll automatically name it what your title was right here. Okay. And so a form, any type of feedback that you want, this form is great. If you just want to check in with your students, how they're doing, if you want to ask them to read something and then reply to it, or whatever it is you're thinking of, you can do it through forms. And what's great about forms is that all the responses that you get can be turned into a spreadsheet. So that's one really nice thing about forms. Untitled question, the first question I always ask is, I always do first name. And I'm going to show you something else. So here are all the different types of answer choices that you can have. Short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, check boxes, drop downs, file upload if you want your students to upload an MP3 or like a video or a voice response. They have to know how to upload those files though if they're creating them, but you can do that. There's a linear scale if you want them to, see how are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 5. There's multiple choice grid, checkbox grid, and then there's date and time. So if you want anything like a quick attendance check, you can say put in today's date, put in the time that you worked on the assignments as you go through it. So you can have something like that as well. So I'm going to put the first question is always their name. I like to do it one question for their first name, and you're going to see that on the answer choices. It sees what you're typing in, and it predicts, the Google form will predict what type of answer you're asking for. So that's my first question, is your first name. And then I'm going to add a question to my form. So that's over here on the right. You see the plus sign, and that's add a question.
Hey,
So
Mark, can I jump in real quickly?
please.
So one of the things I just want to point out that Mark did automatically that he didn't think to mention because he's just so good at doing this automatically is he made the name question a required. Anything that you don't make required, the students can submit the form without filling it out. But if you want to make sure that they put in an answer, for example, put in their name, if you make it required, they cannot submit the form until they do that. It will push them and prompt them to answer that. So that's just a good tip for anything that you want to make sure is answered. Go ahead and just make it required.
Okay. And Michelle, I have a question for you. Do you usually put just name on the first question, or do you do one for first name and one for last name?
I would usually just do name first and last. And if you actually click back on where it says name, you can go into the three dots at the bottom right-hand corner and you can add a description. You could actually put an example. So like there where Mark's showing you under the three dots, if you click description, you could go ahead and say first and last, i.e., you know, Michelle Miller, however you want it to be set up. So that way they'll see kind of an example of what it is you're looking for. But I try to keep the name in one question.
So in the description, I put first and last name. Okay, so I'm going to change this to name. And down here, I don't need this question anymore, so I'm going to get rid of it. So there's a trash can where it says delete when you click on it, and I'm going to get rid of that question. So now I have one question here, and that's name. All right. So I'm going to add my next question. And my next question is, how are you? How are you feeling today? All right, so I'm going to change this from multiple choice, and I'm going to create a linear scale. Just to give you an idea, my linear scale gives you a choice of how you want to do it. If you want to go from 1 to 10. And then it's going to label the scale. So 1, it's going to be not so good, and 10 will be great, or whatever you want. So then, again, it's a required question. And so at this point, when I want them to look at the scale, they're going to look at a scale, 1 being not so good and 10 being great, and they'll select which number they're interested in. And the results, you can see the class average, you can see what student is not doing great, so you can reach out to them or what have you. Okay, any questions? And then if I want to preview to see what this looks like from a student view, I can go up to the top and I can click on the eyeball where it says preview. And here you can see what it looks like for the student. They're just going to click on a number in here to see what it looks like. And you can even test it out yourself, fill it in, and submit it to see what your response would look like. Okay, so I'm going to close the preview right now. And I'm going to talk about these next here. So so far we've talked about how to add a question. The first question always being the name, and the different types of questions here that you can, or answers that you can choose from for your questions. Now I'm going to add another question. I'm going to go to the plus sign here. Now when you're adding a question, you can import questions if you have a doc or something of that sort that you want to import questions from, you can do that. You can add a title or description, and then you can add an image. So if you're doing, and I'm going to focus on adding an image right now. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? You can add an image here. This is for the question title. You can add an image here if you like. I'm going to add an image for the answers. So here on option 1 for the answer, it's going to be multiple choice. I'm going to click on the image to the right of there. And it gives you where you want your picture to come from. I'm going to do a Google image search. And I'm going to put chocolate ice cream. And usually when I do this, I use the word clip art when I do this, because clip art gives me very basic pictures that I can use. So I click on the one I want. I'll use this one here. And I click on insert. So on option 1, I'll type in chocolate, and I'll have a picture. And this is good for primary, but also you can insert an image on your question for history and say, or language arts, and say, hey, write me a paragraph about this, what you think about this picture, or whatever it is. You know, or how's this history picture, where does it come from, what does it signify? I'm going to add a second question option. I'm going to go to my image again to the right. I'm going to go to Google image search again. And I'm going to do the same for vanilla ice cream. Clip art again. And I will select it and insert. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure it's required. So I have Michelle, are you there right now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so you can also add a video, but when you're adding a video, here I'll do another question. Okay, so my question, Michelle, is for videos, they only allow YouTube, is that correct?
If you go ahead, it will try to take you to YouTube, but you should be able to upload a video from your drive. I haven't checked it recently. Can you click on the video icon and see what it prompts for?
All right. And answer these questions. So I'm going to go to the right, click on the video, and there's URL. There's video search where you can just go on to video, but the URL is only to paste the YouTube URL here. So in my experience, I haven't been able to, like I try to put in a play pause it video from my drive, or a Edpuzzle video from my drive, and I haven't been able to insert those because they only allow the YouTube URLs.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it that. I'm so sorry, guys. You wouldn't be able to do it that way, but you should still be able to, if you need to upload one from your drive, like attach it as a file. But no, it will automatically try to link to YouTube since that's what Google owns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the only drawback on adding a video right there. Is there another way, Michelle, that you have from getting to your drive?
I thought you could add it, attach it as a file, but let me play a little bit more with that one. I know we have a question coming from Tammy about best practices for weeding through results. Like if there's a form that you're using daily, is there best to push out that same form? Is it best to make a copy of it so that you don't have all of these different results that you're having to kind of weed through? There are a couple different things you can do, and so I'll talk about the options and you guys can let me know what you think is best. You could make one form, and in your form you could include the option for the date, so that way when they fill out that information in Google Sheets, you can easily filter by the date so you know from that day what the responses were. That's an easy way, and then you don't have to generate a new form every day. You could make a copy of the same form and push out a different form every day. That's just a little bit more lengthy. So those are a couple different things that you can do to kind of help filter through responses. And we could quickly go over how to sort responses in Sheets, but we might want to save that for the end just to make sure we answer any form questions. And then let me know through the chat if that kind of helped answer your question, Tammy, or if you had more questions, and I would be more than happy to walk you through that over the phone. If that's something you want to do, I'm more than happy to do that. Another question we have is, can you use the safe YouTube link with it? That's a really good question. The safe YouTube is awesome, but it's not directly from YouTube. To be perfectly honest, I've not tried that URL, but I do know that Forms is very specific to YouTube. Like I said, I think there's a way to attach a video from your drive, but I need to play with it to give you a better answer. If anybody else has tried that and it works, please let us know. But as of now, I don't think that safe YouTube is an option.
Okay. So yeah, safe YouTube will not go in because it's not an actual YouTube link through this way. So what I've gone through so far is we titled it, we put a name. I've gone through the different types of answer options that you can have for all the questions. I talked about inserting images, noting that students, can upload, you can import questions, you can add a title or description. If you're going to add a section, what that does is that these questions are all grouped together right now in one part of the form. If I want to create add a section here, is what it does is it'll branch off from this question. It'll say if you choose answer number 1, you'll go to this next question. If you choose answer number 2, you'll go to another question. So if you add a section, there's section 2 of 2. What this does is it'll, a lot of people use this for choose your own adventure. Kids create a choose your own adventure when you're doing, for example, writing a story in language arts. And they'll say, okay, you chose the chocolate ice cream. And so from the chocolate ice cream, you're going to say, you chose the chocolate ice cream, so you went into the forest. And you can link these together. You can link this section based on the answer for the chocolate ice cream. So that's something more advanced that if you want to check into. What other ways do you use a divider? Any teachers or Michelle?
Okay. I'm sorry, Mark. I had to get baby. I had to.
You're fine. I didn't know if anybody wanted to chime in. I was talking about dividers. You can use them for choose your own adventure. but maybe somebody else has an idea of what they use dividers for.
I see a lot of teachers use that for specific questions. Like if they choose something, it's going to take them to this feedback versus that feedback. Those are great options. I want to go ahead real quickly though and look at some of the questions. So Mark, can you help me remember that we definitely want to go over real quickly in Sheets kind of how to filter results by date and then maybe person, so that's easy to find information. But also what we'll show you is that when you push out a form in Google Classroom, the results are a lot easier to see for that student. And then Faye asked a really good question about, do middle school teachers usually ask a period question so that the classes are separated in the results, or do you make 5 different forms? So, and I definitely want to have Mark speak to this since he's taught junior high and I've only taught K-5, but from what I've seen, it's very preference based. You could do either or. You could create one form and then make sure you have that period question. And then it's easy to sort and filter, or you could make 5 different forms and then the data is very separated. It's completely up to you, but I definitely want Stacy on. Stacy, what do you typically do? Is that something you'd be willing to speak to? I don't know if she's in there right now. I would definitely reach out to other junior high teachers to kind of see what works best for them. Oh, she says her mic's not working. Okay, I understand tech problems. Yeah, I think it's a preference thing. I would personally keep everything in one form because I love to be able to filter and sort. That makes more sense to me in the way that I organize things. Yeah, and Stacy says she keeps one form. Yeah, that's what I would do, but I've seen other teachers that have 5 different forms. It's really what works best for you.
It depends how comfortable you are with Google Sheets in filtering.
Mark, do you have a sheet that we might be able to pull up and kind of quickly show? I don't know if you have anything that would actually have students.
I don't have anything right offhand. I wasn't thinking about that. Let me.
Well, once you finish this form, we could fill out, we could even just fill out 1 or 2 and kind of quickly go over the filtering. It won't be as if we had a bunch of student data, but you guys will then at least know the steps. But go ahead and finish, Mark. If you want to show how to turn this into a quiz or something that they fill out, then we can.
Yeah, I was going to go to the top here next. One thing on I was going to go up here now because we've gone over types of questions, the answers, and things that you can insert into the Google form also. So I'm going to go up here to the right, and up here I can, starting with the 3 dots, one of the things that's under preferences, under the 3 dots for the Google form, is collecting email addresses. You want to make your questions required unless you change it when you're in the doc. And my default point quiz value will be 2 points. So whenever I make a question, if it's in a quiz, if I turn this form into a quiz, which I'll show you, it'll automatically default to 2 points. Okay, and you can add collaborators. So if you're working with a group of teachers, you can collaborate on the same form if you like. And then my preference is once the form is made with collaborators, I make a copy and keep it in my drive separate from everybody else. You can make a pre-filled link. So if you want to create a form and have some of the questions already filled out, you can create a link with some of the questions already pre-filled or answered. And then make a copy. So if you need to make a copy of your form, if you're going to send it out to 5 different periods, you can do that. All right. So that's the 3 dots. And for settings, this is the big area that you want to really look at. It's really important. It's good to collect email addresses. Response receipts means that the student will get notified. They'll receive a copy of their responses if they request it. You can turn that off. It's not necessary if you don't want to. restrict organize users to EESD is a good idea. And depending on what you're doing, if it's a if you're doing like a choose your own adventure, you do not want to limit it to one response. You want them to go back and try different ways. But if you're doing some sort of formative assessment, or you don't want to get loaded with a bunch of responses, you can limit it to one response per person. And you can also choose if they can edit the form, their answers after they submit, and they can see summary charts and text responses if they like as well. So that's the settings, the general settings. I'll go back up to the settings cog. And then there's presentation. You want to show a progress bar. Sometimes when you fill out forms online, you can see the progress bar to see how many more questions you have to go. You can shuffle the question order, and then confirmation message. After they're all done, you can say, "Hey, great job! Thank you for putting in this form," and they'll receive that message after if you choose to do that. The most important part in settings is the quizzes. If you're using this as a quiz, you're going to choose make this a quiz. Really important, locked mode on Chromebooks. The locked mode only works when they're using our network. So the locked mode on quizzes will not work when you're dealing with your students at home. And it doesn't make much sense because you're not there watching them take the quiz anyways, so they can be looking up answers on their phone. I know that the California Department of Education has put out a statement saying that assessments should be formative in nature and not summative. So this might put a tweak in your lessons and your assessments, but I want you to be aware that you do not turn on locked mode because it won't work with your students being at home. Okay, and then if it's graded in forms, you can immediately release the grade after each submission, but I like to do it later after I review it, and that way they don't get immediate feedback, but I can check if there's any answers that I need to give credit for that should have been there. Like if they misspelled a word or something, or put in just 2 digits instead of 1 digit, but you still want to give them for math and you still want to give them credit. Okay. Respondents, you can see if they see the missed questions that they got. You can make sure they see the correct answers if you want to. I always leave the point values so they see how many points each question is worth. So I went over these 3 areas in settings: the general settings, presentation settings, and the quiz settings. Now I did make this into a quiz. So my questions, you're going to see a couple of things that are different. The first one on the right here, you're going to see total points. And this is now worth 8 points. And so what I did was my default was it's 2 points per question. Now when I click on the question, you'll notice that down here, there's something a little bit different. And that's the answer key and the point value. So if I click on the answer key here, name, I can add a correct answer. There is no correct answer. Okay, so I'm going to make this, their name, 1 point, just to make sure that they see that it's worth a point. They're more likely to put their name in there. And I'm going to click done. So now this is worth 1 point. let's say that there is a correct answer for ice cream. I'm going to choose chocolate. I'm going to go the answer key, and I'm going to make chocolate the correct answer. So they get 2 points if they choose chocolate. They get 0 points if they choose vanilla. And then I'm done. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to add to the quizzes, Michelle, if you're there?
Yeah, just
Or
a couple of tips and tricks. That's really awesome, Mark. I love that automatically grading feature. I think that's really cool. If you wouldn't mind going back into the where your answer key is.
okay.
You might have noticed that when Mark was in the answer key, one of the options that you guys have is to add answer feedback. Can you go ahead and click on that, Mark? If you click on add answer feedback, what's really cool is you can add feedback for whether or not they've gotten something wrong. So right now we're under incorrect answers. So he can add feedback, he can attach a file. So let's say there's something that he wants his students to read if they got it wrong, or you can even insert a video from YouTube. Of course, we know the YouTube videos won't work. I'm really sorry, but that is an option. He can also add feedback for if they got it correct, which is really cool too. So that feedback feature is something that can certainly be utilized. That's really nice to have access to. Another thing I want to point out, because I know that you guys will spend a lot of time creating your questions, and sometimes those questions can take a while. So Mark, would you mind scrolling back up to your linear question, or your, so let's say you have a couple of questions on your quiz that are similar to that. And for Mark, he had to go and type in what that linear scale meant. Let's say that you want to go ahead and use that format. If you click in the question, you'll see that little duplicate option down at the bottom right, kind of next to the trash. You could go ahead and click on duplicate. It's going to copy that exact question so that you have your format, and then you could change what you needed to for your next question. I don't know if I explained that very well, but I've seen a lot of teachers use that in a way to save time, especially when they know they're going to have several questions that'll have the same answer format, but of course a different question like Mark is showing there. Let's say you've already spent time making quizzes and you know, oh gosh, I want to bring in a question from this other quiz, but I spent a lot of time on that. Underneath the add question option on the right hand side there's that arrow with the, it's like import question. If you click on that, you can actually import questions from other quizzes that you've made. And that's really handy for saving time. I give Jim Wolf credit for showing me that one. That saved me a lot of time on some of the forms that I've made, and that's really helpful. There you can select the quiz or the survey that you wanted, and from there choose the question. So that's just a couple of quick tips for saving you time, especially if there are things that you've already made that you just kind of want to quickly bring over. That's really helpful.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate that. Does anybody have are there any other questions in the chat?
The only other questions that we probably want to go over is, of course, how to put this in your Google Classroom, but then also how you would kind of go into Sheets and filter responses.
Okay. And then let me, you want me to go over customized theme real quick?
Sure, yeah. And then real fast, guys, I'm so sorry. My brain is not quite what it usually is. I in my head, I thought you could add a video, but you can't. I'm so sorry. You can only add videos from YouTube right now in Forms. However, I would recommend, if you ever have time, giving Google feedback. Mark, if you see, I don't see the question mark.
It's right down here in the lower right-hand corner.
Oh, awesome. I can't see it on my screen. You might need to scroll down. But if you guys ever see that question mark and where it says report a problem, when you click on that, there's an option to give feedback. And I always fill this out when I can. If you give feedback saying, hey, Google, we'd love to be able to add a video that's not from YouTube, like from our drive, they go through and actually read all that and make changes based on the feedback that they get. So that's something that we could certainly send their way.
We'll do a mass request.
Yeah.
All right. So let me go ahead and do the spreadsheet before Michelle, in case you have to leave, and then I'll end up with a theme. And so I'm going to fill out a couple of questions here on the preview. I'm worried if I bring a spreadsheet up, it'll have, I'm worried about privacy issues right now. And then I'll name John Doe. Doing great. And I'm just going to go through and answer these questions. And notice I didn't put any answers here. I didn't change the answer, so it just says option 1. So you want to make sure when you preview it that this doesn't happen. That's one reason to preview your quiz. So I'm going to click next. And this is because I chose, this is the second section when I click next. And you know, that was based on, remember I said if you chose chocolate ice cream, you went into the forest. So that's an example of how that choose your own adventure works. So I'm going to submit this quiz right here. And yes.
Hey, sorry, I just found a sheet that has a lot of data that would be a little.
Oh, you want to share it?
Yeah, I can try. So guys, just
okay.
I'm so sorry. Bear with me if at any minute I have to have Mark take over again. I'm going to try to share my screen and see if we can do this way. Let's see my tab. And I'll share. And I also have the best internet. If it freezes and I'm still talking, go ahead and holler at me. Mark, will you let me know when you guys can see what I'm talking about? It's trying to load. I have a copy up of a Google Sheet with some data in it. Mark, can you hear me? Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So here I'm in a Google Sheet and I have a bunch of data here. This was not taken from a form. This is something separate, but you will get the general idea. Here I have my student's name, their age, and then homework scores. And let's say I want to go ahead and I want to figure out and just look at my forms or my results based on gender. We'll just use this as an example. Obviously, you'll have a lot of different, we'll pretend this gender here is like a period in the class. I first want to go ahead and select all of my data because I want to be able to filter based on all the data selected. So if you guys see this tiny gray box between the FX and the 1, I call it the Foxy Boxy. It's just a made up name. There's probably a real tech name for that, and I just don't know what it is. But if I click on that, it's going to automatically select all of my data. You can see that it's turned gray there. And so now I can go ahead and when I filter, it's going to include all of the data I've selected. That's the Foxy Boxy, copyright M. Miller. So now if I go over to my toolbars here up at the top right-hand corner, if you guys see this little funnel option, it's called Create a Filter. So if I click on my funnel option, and everything's just a little bit delayed because of my internet, I'm so sorry. I want you to notice that on every single category, I have this little funnel. This is where I can go through and I can sort what I want. So if I go over here to gender and I click on that funnel, I get these options here. I can sort them alphabetically. I can sort by color. Here, I can go ahead and uncheck what I don't want. So right now, it's showing everything. I don't want blanks and I don't want male. I just want my female data to show. Nothing will be deleted. It's only going to temporarily hide what you don't want. So now I've selected what I've wanted. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And now it's only showing the data for my females. If at any point I want to pull all of my data back up, all I have to do is uncheck the filter option. And now everything is there just as it was just a second ago. Turning it off and on is pretty simple. What other questions do you have about sorting or filtering? Is that it?
I have a question, Michelle.
Ask away.
Just can you remind me how do you sort without taking the female or without taking the males away? How do you sort? I don't know. How do you sort something by like a dominant category where like I don't know if I'm making sense.
Like I want it to be, for example, their age. Like I want to see all my 9-year-olds, and then I want it to be.
Yeah, like in order of like age, you want it the whole thing to be sorted by age,
Okay.
or the whole thing to be sorted by like a top score. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
So here I have my filter on. That's a really good question. So what I would do is I'd go to my age, and then what I can do is I can sort A to Z. And I know it says alphabetical, but what it's going to do is it's going to make it least to greatest. Or if you could change that and you could say I want it to be Z to A. So I want my greatest then to be least. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else while I have this open?
So when you have, go ahead.
Mine is a really basic question. So if I'm in my form and I'm trying to look at my results, I know you can go to responses and see all the graphs that way. How do you get from there to the spreadsheet?
Oh, that's a really great question. Is that Karen?
Yes. Remember, because I bugged you last week to do this for me.
Awesome. No, that's a really great question. So what you would do is when you have a form pulled up, and I don't have one right now, so hold on, let me go ahead and open one up, if it will let me here. Let's see. Hold on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up forms. At any point, if you guys can't see my screen, please let me know. I have very weak internet. So what Karen is asking is, okay, so you have your data there in a sheet, but how did you get the data from the form to the sheet? How did that happen? So here, if I'm in a form, I'm going to go ahead and pull up a blank one. If I click up at the top right-hand corner where it says responses, you can look at your responses there. But what I want to do, and this is just a blank one, so there are no responses. If I look at that green little icon, it says, do you want to view responses in sheets? And if I click on that, it's going to automatically create a sheet for me based off the responses that I have. And see, even though this form doesn't have any responses, it automatically brought over all of my questions so I can see what my headers are. And that's where the data would go.
Thanks for answering my very basic question.
No, it's a perfect question. It's awesome.
Thanks.
So we have a couple more questions, Michelle.
Okay.
Do you have to copy it from the form to a sheet to sort? So I guess
That's a great question Karen had. All you have to do is go from your form, and here, like I'm in my questions. If I wanted to, I click on responses. When I click on that little green icon, it will open up in a sheet for me. So you don't have to copy anything over. It will automatically make it. And you notice that the header here, or the title, is going to be the exact same as my form. But what differentiates it is this little purple icon. So the purple means forms, and if it's green, that means sheets.
Okay, and second question, Faye had a question, can you sort by period and then alphabetically for easy grading purposes?
Yeah, and it's not that hard to do, but like I said, my brain is just not what it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and start from scratch, and if I make a mistake, please forgive me. I really don't want to confuse anybody.
Let's pretend that the age is the period.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. So it's already sorted by age. So what I want to do, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to select my two columns that I want here. So I know I've got student and I've got age. So hold on, Control H. So I have those two.
So you hit the control and then clicked it
and
to get the second column?
I just did that, and please bear with me. My brain is just not fantastic. There used to be a different way to do this in sheets, and it's changed. So let me real quickly. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That was my baby. I promise that wasn't me. Okay. Hold on. I want more sort range. Okay, so here what I want to go to is sort range. I'm so sorry, guys. Let's start back from the beginning. So you asked how to first sort or filter by period. So let's pretend that my age is a period. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn on my filter, and I'm going to pretend that period 10 is what I want to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and click clear. I'm going to choose period 10. I'm going to hit OK. And now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and alphabetize this information. So if I go to student, see how I still have my filter up? I'm going to go ahead and click on that little funnel by student. And I'm going to click on sort A to Z. And then it's going to alphabetize the information there along with the data I have.
Yeah. And this is a junior high. This is why I put first name and last name separate, because then you can sort by first name or last name if you have those as two separate questions.
Hey, Michelle.
Hey.
Can I ask a question? Could you explain again what is the difference between the FX button and the little funnel?
Great question. So the FX button, or what I call the Foxy Boxy, like I said, that's not the real name. That's just going to select all of the data for you. So what happens if I don't click on that, I'll show you. Like right now I have students selected. See how I have the blue perimeter around my cell? If I click the filter button now, what it will, oh, of course it selected everything for you just to be funny. What I've seen it do in the past is when people have only certain things selected and then they click the filter option, it will only place a filter on what they have selected. So see right here, I selected one cell and then I hit filter, and now there's only a filter funnel option for that one cell. I recommend always selecting all the data in your sheet first, then selecting the filter feature. That way you have a filter on each one of your headers. Does that answer your question?
I think so. It's a little confusing for Bill, but
So what happens is if I selected age and just did that column, if I didn't do the Foxy Boxy, it would change the numbers in the age. It would sort them, but everything else would have remained the same. All the other numbers would. So Billy might show up as a 9-year-old instead, or 8-year-old instead.
okay, so you always then in general select the Fox box and the funnel then.
It's Foxy Boxy, but yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's just best practice so that there's no data that gets misplaced.
Okay, got it.
All right. Are there any other questions for sorting? So this is, this comes back to the question for periods or different topics. Are you going to do one form for all your periods and then sort it? Or are you going to create a form for each period and then you don't have to sort that because you're going to have that a separate spreadsheet for each period if you create a form for each period. So that's why it's preferential of what you do. It depends on how comfortable you are with doing these sorts for your classes.
Mark, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Are you good to take over?
Yeah. Are there any other questions about spreadsheets before she does that? Oh, so could I do a new sheet for each week if I reuse the same form?
Oh, yes, that's a great question. So one of the things that I'd recommend doing in a situation like that, let's go ahead and pretend that this is from week 1. If I go ahead and I select everything using the Foxy Boxy, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control C, that's copy. What I can do down here, if you see that plus sign on the bottom left-hand corner, I'm going to add a sheet. And what it's automatically going to do is add a sub sheet. Here I can see sheet 2. And then from there, what I can do is I can paste the data. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control V. in that subsheet. It's going to take a second to come on over. And now I have all the data that was in my sheet 1 and sheet 2. If I click on this arrow, I can go ahead and I can rename it. So I could actually call that week 1 or whatever it is that you wanted to call it. Then I can go back to here, my sheet 1, and then I can actually delete all of the information I have. Now, something to keep in mind with a form. Your data from the form is always going to go into this first sheet, and actually, because this sheet is a sheet itself, it's not attached to a form. If your sheet is attached to a form, what you're going to have is you're going to have something called form responses, like I'm showing you here. All the data is always first going to go to that form responses. And what's really important for you to remember is to make sure that you delete the rows. So what I mean by that is if I go ahead and I select all of my data here, if I just hit the backspace and delete that data, there's still kind of coding on the back end. And what I mean by that is when I go ahead and have kids fill out another form, the data is going to jump down into row 32, and I'm going to have all these blank rows, which is going to make it harder to kind of find. So if I go ahead and select all the rows with the data in it, and if I right click on that information, I have the option here to delete my rows. Oh, I'm sorry, I hit hid and I didn't want to do that. I right click, I hit delete rows. Now all of my rows have been deleted with that data. Of course, I still have it here in that sub tab that I've created. And now when they go to fill out the form, it's automatically going to fill out on that very first row as opposed to down 31, 33, so on and so forth. Did that make sense?
So if I have a weekly quiz that I give, could I get all that data, like a weekly check-in, and can I graph how they do each week? Like if I had, let me see if I had a 5-question quiz every Friday for math. Is there a way that I could, the form would be, let's see, never mind. So
Yeah.
the form would be the same, and then the sheet, I'd add it to a new sheet. Your explanation was good.
You're talking about if you give out the same kind of formative or informative assessment every week.
Right, like how are you feeling? Rate how you're feeling every week.
If you do that, I would recommend leaving that all actually just in the regular sheet, because then you can easily filter. But what's really nice about sheets that a lot of people don't know about, which will make you kind of look like a genius, is here at the bottom right hand corner. Do you guys see that explore option? If you click on the explore option, it's going to go ahead and create graphs for you based off the data in your sheet. So right here, I could go ahead and take a look at the ones that have been pre-created for me. And let's say here, I want to go ahead and find this base count on gender, or I can take a quick look at how my students are doing with their homework. I could go ahead and select that graph, and I can add it, click and drag it over to my sheet. And then I have a really nice visual there of how my kids are doing. And I didn't have to make anything. It was automatically created for me. And there are lots of things you can do with that are a little bit more in depth. But if it's something you're interested in, let us know. We can always do a webinar on that.
All right. We have just a few more minutes left. We can, rather than the theme, I think you can explore on Google Forms on your own, where you can add pictures or change the colors. You can change the font if you like, those types of things. Yeah.
If I turn back over to you, will you show how you would add that in Google Classroom and then show how to import grades?
Oh, add the Google Form into Google Classroom? Yeah. Okay.
You guys are amazing. Please feel free to reach out to me or Mark or Jenny or Kristen if you have any questions or want help over the phone. We'd be more than happy to do that.
Okay. Can everybody, so I can't see your comments right now, but hopefully you can see my screen at this point. And so this is, I titled this quiz April 20th, 9:30 EESD PD for professional development. And I'm going to show you now how in Google Classroom how to send that out. When you send you can send a form out by email if you like. You can embed it if you have a website and you want people to take a quiz, or in Google Slides presentation, you can embed it. And you can do a link. If you want to do a link, there's a shortened URL that you can do, and then you just click copy, and that'll copy the link for you. So there's a couple ways you can put this into Google Classroom. And I'm going to do create. I'm going to create an assignment. This quiz assignment, all it is if you open that up, it'll open up a blank quiz for you to put in. So I actually don't recommend this. I recommend putting the quiz in under assignment. And I'll do April 20th, 9:30 example will be my title for this Google Classroom. And then I'll add, and you can either put in the link, but it's also, the way that Michelle was showing me earlier was going through the Google Drive. So I'll click on Google Drive. And here it is because it's my most recent, or you can search for a form that you've created. And I'll double click on that. And the Google form will be in there. Notice it gives you a choice to put on lock mode. Again, since the students have it at home, do not put lock mode on. And then there's grade importing, and you can import your grade automatically into the Google Classroom gradebook if you like as well. And then the rest of it, so again, I did add, I went to my Google Drive, found the form, and put that in there. Okay, so that way they see the Google form and it works out well. And then the rest of it is just normal. Are you going to assign it, schedule it, save as a draft? And then you can also put, for example, this quiz was only 7 points, if you remember, it was 8 points. So, and it did that. So we'll put 7 points here. So I'll leave this, and then you can put a due date. And then you can click assign. So now my stream, I can see the assignment. Here's the student work. Here's my 3 students. I'm waiting for them to do the assignment. And you can also click on the instructions and click on the form to make sure it works.
Hey, Mark.
Okay, yes.
Can you go back to your Google Classroom page and click on where we could see the students? Perfect. So what I want to, I'm sorry.
I'll go back. Instructions or student work?
Student work. This is perfect.
Okay.
One of the things I want to point out, which is really nice, is that if you have your students, if you have if they've completed it and their grades are all done, so let's say your students have completely finished the form, you can go ahead and select import grades. And I want to say you might have to return the work to them first.
You
so
do.
What I mean
yeah.
that is if you select all of your students and then hit that return button after you're done grading, it will return that grade to them. I'm sorry. And then from there, when you hit import grades, it will automatically bring in the grade over from the form. So like if you have a bunch of multiple choice and it's one of those things that's auto graded, when you hit import grades, it should automatically bring that over. There isn't anything that you should have to do. Does that make sense? I don't know, Mark, if I explained that very well.
Yeah, since you hit return, or you can just put import grades when they're done. They didn't do these. I just gave them, if they did it, it would have already scored this for me, and I would just hit the import grades and it would have been done. Does that make
Yes, that's all. I just wanted to make sure they knew to click that import grades option.
Mm-hmm. And this works best. I mean, you can manually grade, text answers, but if you do multiple choice or numbers, it goes a lot quicker and more seamless if you do it that way.
Mark, can I ask a question? It's Christine.
Yes.
Okay, in this screen that you've got up now, if I clicked on any like Betty or Jennifer, I would not see their form. I always had to go back into my drive into forms to look at their grades. When I
And look at the spreadsheet. If you do the import, if you have it where their grades are automatic, their grades should show up right here. But
yeah,
but you do have to go back into the drive to look at their exact answers.
yeah. Okay, so you cannot look at the exact answers because I did like what you did. I gave them credit for something because they misspelled something or they capitalized something because it was a fill in.
Right.
I had to grade that question.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, did I set it up wrong? So it's correct. You've got to grade it in forms. All that Classroom does is get the imported grade.
That's my understanding, yeah. And that's why, when I do these, I like to do them with where I don't have to go back manually. I try to make it all multiple choice.
Exactly.
If possible, then it's seamless. But if you're doing text options like vocabulary or spelling errors, then, the kid that capitalized every spelling word would get a 0 unless you manually did it.
Learn that one the hard way, or how about everyone they put the in front of
Yeah,
everything.
correct. Yeah. So it works best if it's just multiple choice.
Got it.
On there.
Thanks.
I'm gonna do something real quick with we're going over. If you have to leave, that's fine. No offenses taken. But I'm gonna show one other item here real quick on the form. And I'm going to go back to my questions. I'm going to add a question here. There's our district, I think it's set up already, where there's a new extension, and this extension is called Equatio, like an equation without the N, and the I-O are capitalized. And Equatio it's done by the same people that do Read Write Google, and Equatio is a math is a way for students to quickly put in math equations. So if I want to change this equation, I'm using the extension Equatio. And down the bottom here, you'll see things come up, just like Read Write Google has their option menu. And I'll click on speech input, and I believe your students are able to use this as well now, this extension. And this speech input, I'll say 24 times 9. I'll have to record it first. 24 times 9. Then I click the math. Wait for it. And so it automatically put in 24 times 9 as the question. You can't see it here, but because of the 3 dots, I'm going to center align it. And it does say 24 times 9 on the preview. So it's just a quick way to put in any math equations. You can put, 9 squared, and it'll actually put the 2 above the 9 there and things like that. So that's just an extension that you can use for your students and yourself to make the math easier. They are put in as pictures, so they cannot be edited once they're in. Okay. So
Mark, we seem to have lost you, or at least I don't hear anything. All I see is pictures.
I didn't know if it was just me, but I lost you too. I was trying to fix mine too.
Okay, I see you now, Mark, and I hear everything.
Yeah, we lost you for a bit. Actually, I think we lost him again.
I do too.
That's all right.
Okay. Thanks, you guys. It was good.
Awesome. I'm glad. And I will be emailing these out to you guys so you guys can go back and rewatch them whenever you want. If you guys have any other questions, please email us. We are doing another session at 1:30. So if you want to hop back on at 1:30, we'll be doing this again at 1:30. Otherwise, you guys have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
You're welcome.